listening to Inclusive AF with Jackie Clayton and Katie Van Horn.
All right. Welcome. Hi, Jackie.
Hi, how are you doing, Katie?
I'm good. I see that you're sitting in a new location. You are at home though, yes?
Well, this is for the flood. So I'm sitting actually in the sitting room where
In,
one sits.
in the flood zone? You're not in the flood
flood,
zone?
right. Well,
Okay.
I'm just staring. I'm sitting in front of the window staring.
How much rain you guys have had rain already,
We've
right?
had like a tenth of an inch. It doesn't count.
Okay.
But we're still under flood warning. I'm in Texas. We're talking, right? Hurricane Beryl came last night, hit landfall in Houston, and so I'm just sitting by all the windows. I was like, I think I'm going to do the podcast inside just in case, so I don't run across my office. My office is across, but you're not in your office either today.
No, well, it's very sunny here. And so I needed to sit in my sitting room as well because it was so sunny in the office. So you know that the office gets very warm because, it's 400 degrees out in Arizona.
Yes.
Literally.
And I become a meteorologist. I'm an
Yes.
instant meteorologist, scientist. I will let you know how it's going around the world.
Well, I
Partly cloudy.
Been on radar alert for all of Houston because we have team members there, but I would say I'm a junior meteorologist, I'm not a full-blown. I still need a lot of work because again, I'm used to Arizona where it's like, oh, it's hot or it's not hot. Those are the only two options we have. Like those are the only two things we really have. I love when they have the meteorologist like every day on the weather and it's like, oh, it's going to be hot again today. And you're like, thank you.
Thanks.
Super helpful.
Yes.
Anyhow. All right. Enough about the weather. So Jackie, this is the Inclusive AF podcast. I don't know if you're aware.
No, I'm glad to hear that. And I am Jackie Clayton.
Oh, very good. And I'm Katie Van Horn. So this is all good. So now that we have all that dialed in, usually we forget to do that entirely. So at least we have that part dialed in. But we have a guest with us today that I want to turn over and introduce. So Brittany, would love for you to introduce yourself and share a little about who you are.
Hello. So I feel a little left out, although it is hot here. But I am based in the Northeast. But hello, my name is Brittany Hale. I am founder and CEO of B&D Consulting. And I focus on helping women in leadership gain the clarity that they need to lead their teams with confidence and make the strategic decisions that are going to allow them to both excel in their roles and boost their organization's success.
I love that. I mean, I read that because I was like, ooh, now I need clarity when I saw this.
Yes.
Clarity. I think a lot of times we don't know the clarity that we need in order to build this. So I'd love to hear more about why you started your consultancy. Like what was the gap? What's common?
Yes. So I'm a happily retired trial attorney. And I say that with pride, but being trained as a lawyer and then eventually moving into being a trial attorney, you are only successful as your ability to identify the root cause and to develop the solution. And so I was very adept at that. I never lost a case. I was practiced for years. And eventually I realized the key to winning the case was really in jury selection. And it was that ability to lean into what used to be called that soft skill, right? The emotional intelligence necessary to identify the gap between what people said and how they operated. And not only that, but understanding the relational dynamics between everybody who ended up on the jury and developing a narrative that was responsive to that. And I did that in-house for a while, and I realized that most organizations are just scaled out juries. There's always that gap between what they say and how they operate. And I know that both of you know a whole lot about that. And I found that in working with organizations, I've built out an HR department for a $40 million organization. I've led organizations myself that were not my own. And I found that we were very often creating a budget line item for bad management, and we were not preparing people.
Wait, pause, because I'm about to pass I'm literally like, thank God someone said it. It's not a line item. There's 5.
Correct.
There's 5 line items.
Correct. And so it was very frustrating because, again, as an attorney, I came in after the bad decisions were made, right? But I have to develop the narrative to figure out how we got here. So then my questions, through depositions or this question and answer session under oath. So you have this deposition and I'm reading through it and I'm just like, well, why did you make that decision? Why did we do this? Why did no one intervene? Why do we have people in leadership who may have been high-performing individuals? They may be subject matter experts, but that does not a people manager make. So how do we reconcile the two? And very often the organizations that have come in and provided strategic advisement to would say, well, we don't have an L&D budget. And they say, well, you don't have a strategy for growing your organization, because I can guarantee you it's going to get expensive when this person is relying on their common sense and their subjective life experience to identify who's capable, who has potential, who's high performing, and how do we identify those benchmarks of success. So I decided to move into that. So B&D Consulting, B&D stands for Be Nobody's Darling. And it's taken from one of my favorite poems by Alice Walker, but it's my challenge to myself and to my clients to focus on developing those frameworks for decision-making that actually matter, that are actually going to move the needle. Get clear. Right? I say clarity and conflict are the 2 most underrated tools to growing an organization and keeping it successful. So that's my hot mic moment. So
I think she just solved all the problems in the world in 5 minutes.
Well, I want to go back.
I'm clear now. Clear.
Yeah, I want to go back to this budget piece and just highlight this, because I think you're calling something out that I think a lot of new leaders or new executives don't know, that
correct.
Payroll is your most expensive budget item.
Yep.
And people are your most expensive budget item. So, just
Always.
going from the CFO's, viewpoint alone. And so I think, saying, hey, we have a line item around bad management. You made my head go, yeah, absolutely. You have to do that. You have to plan for who's going to mess up, what is it going to cost us? And this is also when I talk to leaders about HR and why HR is important, it's that we can save you money by not getting us sued. We can save you money by getting the right leaders in place, all of these things, retaining the right folks. So I love that you call that out, because I think a lot of folks forget about that or miss that part. So, but
correct.
But then let's talk about the things you said.
Yeah. And again, HR is very often focused on compliance and is not seen as a revenue generating vertical. So therefore, from a CFO's perspective, it doesn't make sense to put resources there. However, we know that HR is about more than compliance, right? Did we interview one of each? Did we do what's federally and state compliant? But there's a growth element to it. And this is something that's starting to emerge within the past few years. We've seen people operations and we've seen a lot of focus put on that, because we're belatedly understanding what many HR professionals know, which is that's where it starts. And when you bring someone into an organization, if, what do they say, an ounce of, a pound of prevention, or an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of, pain, or whatever it is. It's that's the space, that's your opportunity to plug into this person and to help them kind of shrug off their framework for decision making that's informed by their unique world experience, and help and provide them with the support that they need. Because again, once you're managing people, if you grew up in a conflict averse or conflict avoidant environment, you hear conflict and you think fighting. you hear conflict and you don't see an opportunity, so you shut it down. And in so doing, create spaces that are highly activated, very low trust. And then that turnover happens, and going back to the HR, turnover gets expensive. We can't have people cycling out before we've received a return on our investment in them, which takes what, 12 months, 18 months, depending on the level at which you're hiring them. So now if we have this revolving door, it doesn't make sense. It's not good business sense. It doesn't have, it doesn't further the financial goals of the organization. So how do we set aside resources in a way that's going to further the organization's objectives, and that requires a little bit of commitment to focusing on things outside of just what's immediately in front of you?
Well, and I think when you say that, I'm thinking about our listeners that maybe they are individual contributors, or they're not in HR, or they don't have that leadership in how it shows up. Like we're not talking a literal line item that says we're going to spend $5,000 on our SECI management. I mean, it manifests itself in a lot of different ways. I've been studying a new way of doing engagement and looking at it. A lot of times it looks like pizza parties or days off, or all of these things that have an actual cost to the organization, and that we have to put together as human resource professionals. And yet when we're like, these are the people that are trainable and these are the people that are not, and you hear, but they've been here for 3 years, and you're like, okay, we just added, that's another line item of what it's going to cost, plus to replace, plus to retrain and all of that knowledge. If I told you that decision that you just made is going to cost us about $875,000.
Correct.
They would look at you like we're growing bananas out of your ears. But later, we all have to fix that situation, whether it's individual contributors, other people with HR, and then all of a sudden, it's not what can we do to prevent this from happening. It's who's the next person that we can try, who's the next round peg that we can try to put in the square hole to try to do that. And that's what
happens. Yeah, and that's how the glass cliff happens, right? Because we say, well, this is how we've always done it. And my question to my clients is, okay, well then why am I here? Right? Because if the way that you've always done things is what's working, you wouldn't need a shift. But okay, we say, great, we're going to put women in leadership without any support, without any concerted thought about providing them with resources. So great, Katie's phenomenal. We're going to put Katie in leadership. Katie's not going to be provided with an executive coach. Katie's not going to be provided with any sort of L&D budget. Katie's not going to be able to do an assessment of the team that she is inheriting. So now Katie's standing in front of a group of 200, or even smaller, let's say a group of 50 folks, expected to lead them without having any context on how to build trust. What motivates these people? We know most people are motivated by one of three things at work: power, affiliation, or achievement. If you don't know that going in as a leader, you're set up for failure. So then, 12 months out, Katie's unable to hit the goals. And then we say, we tried it, right? We tried to put women in leadership. It just didn't work out. Bring Bob back in.
My husband,
direct quote right there. Let's bring Bob back in.
That.
Bob always.
That is a direct quote. I think it's John, but Bob. Todd likes to call me Mr. Brown. That's what he said when I get called in. And he always asks me, did they ask for Mr. Brown, or did they just want Jackie to come in and, smile and offer cake? Or do they want Mr. Brown? Which means you're going to have to back up and let me do what I need to do to get this done. And I don't want to hear anything about it. And I will give you what you asked me for. I don't want to hear anything about it. And we're going to move on once we get there. Does everyone understand that? And it's difficult to be in that position. But I do want to go back to something that you said when you were talking about conflict. And I think this is a different culturally. I see this within different age groups, and just where you are culturally. We were talking about being a parent, like being a parent with my children. To this day, there's a certain tone in my voice, and my children will come, who are 21 and 23,
They know. Yeah.
will stand right by my side and be like, what's happening? Right? There's a certain amount of conflict that is a level of safety, and we have to look at it. When you're hearing conflict, it's an opportunity to get things right and to make those choices. But it's unfortunate, especially in teams. And I want to hear, this leads to a question, especially in teams where some people are more, they're driven through conflict and understand the outcome. And you see them where it's like, I feel so happy that we had this conflict because now we have the solution. And then you see the other half that are dejected and miserable and upset. What do you suggest for leaders that see this kind of split in the organization to try to get everybody on the same page?
So the first thing that you need to do to get everyone on the same page is use the same definition, right? We all have been in that space where we've said a word and assumed that everyone had the same understanding of that meaning. So conflict, when I speak about conflict with my clients, is conflict is the energy that's created by a perceived gap, emphasis on perceived, between what we want and what we're expecting.
Hi, I'm George LaRocque, and I'm looking forward to exploring the critical trends shaping the future of work and technology with you over on the Work Tech podcast. Now, this podcast is a little different. I bring together industry leaders, innovators, and investors, and we go deep into market intelligence that matters to HR pros and tech providers alike. So give the Work Tech podcast a listen here on the Work Defined Podcast Network, and please subscribe if you like it. See you there.
That's how we're talking about conflict, right? Conflict is not blame. Conflict is not fighting. Conflict can be expressed in many ways. But when we're talking about this, okay, so then the question becomes, what were you expecting and what are you experiencing? And that's how we get to the root of it. So when one example that I use often is, I worked with an organization, and there was a director who, I'm not exaggerating when I say, would run over their own mother if it meant getting credit. This is someone that was highly motivated by achievement. They needed, I call it the gold star complex. And so there were other directors who had direct reports, and this director, would have tons of conflict with them. And the teams couldn't work together. That's not sustainable, right? You can't have whole verticals not communicating with each other because directors are in conflict. So what do we want? We may want to hit our individual goals. This individual director, what do they want? They want credit, right? What are they experiencing? People who are not willing, people who are obstructionists in their mind, right? So the other directors, what are they experiencing? Frustration, overwhelm, complaints from their team because it's other directors, inserting themselves, and, there's a sense of ownership, right? This is my job, my project. Why is other director telling me what to do? I don't report to them. So then when we get into that space, and Jackie, to your question, how do we deal with that? Well, my question is, okay, what do we want? Because externally, someone interacting with the organization is not like, the MarComms team, the marketing and communications team, superb. Product development team, no one's thinking about that. Either they have a good experience with the organization, with the product, with the brand, or they don't. That's it. Am I getting my money's worth? Am I getting whatever it is that I was told I should expect? Are you fulfilling the brand promise? So now, in terms of conflict, where's the opportunity? So I had a conversation with this director who's, again, highly activated and always ready to, go off, right? And so we started having this conversation, and they said, I'm just so tired of trying to prove myself. And I said, okay, well, at what point was your inherent worth as a person ever at issue? Who are you proving yourself to? Right? So we see that this person, they're holding on to this experience of being a first generation immigrant in a community where they were one of the only, right? And constantly having to demonstrate that they were capable and constantly fighting for their humanity to be recognized and respected. That's not this. Right? So we had to really reset that. So now their goals, it wasn't just so much about you get the credit in as much as you're able to collaborate with others. Your raise, your performance, all of that is wholly predicated on your ability to collaborate with other people, because it's not just you. So when we're talking about conflict, again, if I were conflict averse or conflict avoidant, I would say, oh my gosh, this person is shouting. I'm going to log out of the Zoom. I'm going to say, who do you think you're talking to? Right? We would have gone down another path. But being conflict curious is, oh, where'd that come from? Right? And so then we got to build trust, because this person's now sharing like a very deeply rooted experience. This person's 30 years out of, formal education, but they're still holding on to this, and it's impacting work. So that's why I say, being conflict curious is so critical, because you have to, again, get clear and understand what we're actually solving for.
Are we going to owe you a copay? I feel like I'm going to listen to this over and over.
I'm like, are we in a therapy session right now?
It feels like it. Or were you
Yes.
talking to me? Do you have access? I just got a new security thing. I don't know if I've been using it right, but I feel seen and heard. But it's true what you're talking about. It's one of the things that I hear a lot at work, and Katie, tell me if you hear this, where people say, I didn't want to get in trouble. No one has answered this to me in 20 years. What is trouble?
Right.
What do you mean get in trouble? Because I have gotten in trouble. And
when we talk about women and femme presenting people, women and femme presenting people especially. Don't even get me started on the eldest daughter syndrome. I don't know if anybody else is an eldest daughter, right?
Well, we're both youngest, so
okay.
Really
so you got to benefit from the trials and tribulations.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But the space of, as a woman, as a femme presenting person in the workplace, work really hard, keep your head down, and hope and trust that someone else will notice. And if you advocate for yourself, well, humility is really important, right? And then my question is, well, can you be humble about your purpose?
Good one.
I don't know if that's the case, but why do we require this of women at work? We require the same skill set, but we ask for women, but don't talk about it. Mm-hmm. Don't talk about it, and lead, but not that way. Right?
And I don't even know what that means. I think of something interesting. I worked for all women up until I was, I guess, like 35. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of things I didn't know. I didn't know better. Like I just didn't know. I just didn't know what the rules were at work, which made me really difficult. But it was too late by then. Like, I can't undo any of this. I don't. That was a gift. What we're talking about.
Right.
Like, Jackie, you're asking so many questions, and I'm like, well, I have them. So answer them. And if you answer them faster, we can get through this. If you answer them.
Right.
But then it's not necessarily a good example of what the reality is for other people of having it, like wanting to understand these things. Do you think that it's changed in any form? Have you seen it change? Let's just look at, the last 4 years, we'll say, like since COVID. Have you noticed any change in it, or is it been the same? Because we hear a lot of noise, but I don't know what the impact has been.
Yeah, so it's gone up and down. So when we talk about change, and again, I'm a millennial, right? So I've benefited from Gen X and Boomer mentors who each have had different perspectives, but very often when we've plugged in, they're focused on legacy, and so they're like, here are all the things not to do. Here are all of the things that I wish I didn't do or didn't, experience. I would say within the past 4 years, we've had, and again, due to an emphasis on equity and the racial reckoning after 2020, and it felt so hopeful and amazing. And organizations seemed to really get it. And then we had the pandemic, and the pandemic, among being a lot of things, was really kind of the testing ground for organizations and leaders to show and prove. Can you compete? Does your organizational culture compete with the culture of what's going on at home? Is your leadership strong enough to withstand? I've led a completely remote organization before, right? So how do you build trust with someone who's literally in another country? And what we're starting to see is the answer to that is no. People didn't, trust that, because we've seen, the emphasis on return to work policies, because we haven't been curious, right? We haven't gotten clear on what we wanted to achieve. During that time, it was okay. We're experiencing Zoom fatigue, but we're not creating environments to develop professionals. So that experience of, popping into someone's office or like the water cooler talk, folks who either had their whole college experience online or a majority of it, they didn't benefit from that. And so now we throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, well, we just need everybody to come back in office, and, I need to see butts and seats because I need to trust that you're working. So we have that. And then we have generative AI, which is incredibly useful, except when we're talking about leadership, we're looking at people who want to supplant human connection for artificial connection. And that is a huge issue. And I look at, a lot of these, like the tech bros, right, who just, we don't need people. Well, there's an air of like being a relational reject, right? You've not been able to connect with people. So you create an artificial girlfriend who will say all of the right things. You create an artificial environment that you have sole control over because you aren't resilient enough to deal with situations and factors outside of your control. So when it's come to women, we're starting to see women being ousted out of leadership. They were good enough to help us in a crisis. But now that things are starting to level out, well, again, what was it? Bring Bob back in.
Mhm.
This was great, Jackie. Amazing. Thank you so much for your help. Now we need the real leaders back in here.
Right. I think that's the piece that's also like there, you mentioned the glass cliff earlier, and I think there's also this piece that I've seen time and time again is we've tried everything. So let's, as our last ditch effort, we're going to bring in a woman.
Right.
And again,
Right.
give her no resources, give her no training, give her no money, give her nothing. And if she doesn't pull it off, then we'll know women can't do this job. Well,
Right.
but by this one situation, or, put in whatever, whatever a descriptor you can use, women use whatever, because I think it's how many times have we heard that? Oh, we tried diversity. Oh, we tried, to have a woman in leadership. We tried to do these things. And so I think there's also this, we're expecting miracles from folks without giving them the right attention and time. And also saying to them, you have to be flexible, you have to adapt, you have to do all of these things without giving them the tools to do that. And it's just unfortunate because I think that's one of the pieces as well. Like, what are we actually doing to teach them how to have that constructive conflict, to teach them how to not be, oh my gosh, this person just yelled, so now I am going to shut down my Zoom, walk away, whatever it might be, versus, okay, let's ask more questions and let's be curious. So I think that's just
Mhm.
another, like, there's so many layers to this conversation that folks, we could talk for hours about it, because I think there's just so many,
Yeah.
because yeah, it's interesting. But when you think about, coming into an organization where they do have, where Bob has come back, let's say,
Mhm. Mhm.
poor Bob, I don't know why we're picking on him, where Bob has come in and it has been, oh, we tried that thing, it didn't work, so now we're going to bring in Bob. Hey, during the pandemic, yeah, we had certain people step in, but now we're going to go back to what we know. How do you pull back from that, or how do you work with an organization in that situation?
Hi, we're Meg and Amy from The Meg and Amy Show.
We're not only tech execs and big picture thinkers, we're also best friends.
We're curious learners. And on this podcast, we're challenging the status quo and activating the future.
And we're going to give advice about work and leadership, right, Meg?
We can't help ourselves. But this podcast is about exploring possibility, not being right.
That sounds refreshing.
For more, tune in to The Meg and Amy Show.
So the way that I work with an organization like that, typically, and this is the beauty of kind of self-selecting, right, is I am very clear. So I will, for example, I default to, oh, your boss, what's her name? Right? Because there's no reason for me not to assume that a woman would be in leadership. But if Bob and I are engaging, he says, look, we tried the DEI thing, we tried, all of that, it didn't work. My question is, what didn't work? What were you expecting and what happened? Because I know organizations that have perhaps a decades-long finance strategy. So what did we expect to happen in 12 to 18 months with DEI? Did we expect to solve racism? Did we, this organization has been around for 100 plus years, right? Or 50 plus years. How much time did we expect to dedicate to this? Bob, what's your tolerance for change? You want things to go back. Okay. What was really great about the way things were before? And is your subjective need for control a business strategy?
Okay, but you're going to have to say that, because if I say that to Bob, he's going to be very upset.
But again, I'm endlessly curious, and I have it on my site. Like, I am going to ask a lot of questions. If you cannot tolerate being asked questions, we won't work well together. Because, and again, I'm trained in the Socratic method, right? We arrive to conclusions through examination and inquiry. What are we so afraid of learning? And is that the thing that's holding the organization back from growing? We live in an incredibly global world, right? We know in just a year, millennials are going to be a majority of the workforce. We have Gen Z that's going to occupy a certain amount of the workforce. They're going to be here. They're not going anywhere. How do you want to engage with them? Do we want to just brush off as, 30% of our work? These kids don't want to work these days. Okay. What does work look like to you? And also, these are your kids. So if they don't want to work, it's because you haven't really taught them the value of it. Right? So what are we doing? What are we solving for? Those are some of the questions I would ask Bob.
I feel like I love that response. And I also feel like there's a lot of DEIB programs that worked exactly the way that they were designed. We had more voices, we had more conflict, we had more innovative ideas, and we had people that were at peace. And I think that people's peace is very uncomfortable for certain groups of people when you're not used to that. Like, I was used to you I liked you better when you were quiet and didn't talk to anybody.
Right.
But now you're talking about things and it makes me very uncomfortable. So Robert, see his friends on the wall. So I'm gonna call them
Right.
We're not friends yet. Those are it's the devil, it's what you are familiar with, and because we know what the conflict is with change, or how change averse, because we've all, anybody who's tried to change payroll from anything to anything knows
Right.
that it's conflict averse. People are change averse. People come out of the woodworks who haven't talked in public in years will come and
Right.
tell you not to change your payroll software. So we know what it is within the organizations, but I do like what was the expectation, and what versus what the outcome is. And when you put it in those things of what the program is, I think a lot of the programs were successful. They just didn't go to that. They didn't have an understanding of what that was going to look like. And now what?
Yeah.
We solved the initial ask, and now what are we supposed to do with that? And then they want more engagement, which is hilarious. Like, engage with you, like, for what? I don't know. I'm one of those people. I've worked at home for I don't know, close to 20 years. So I don't know. So there's a lot of things that are really difficult for me to try to understand, because I am one of those people that, don't like being in the office. I would prefer not to have to engage in the office. It's not, I don't know what it is. It's something on some spectrum somewhere where it's like the omnivore, amnivore.
No, I agree. Yeah.
I just am not, like, I'm on several boards and nonprofit boards. And one of the things that is always, I try to make very clear, I don't join these boards to make friends. Like, I'm not going to see you outside of the board. Like, I don't mean to be rude to any of y'all on this board. Don't ask me to come hang out with you. Like, I'm not on the board to make friends. And I feel the same way at work. Like, I am going to be friendly, but that I don't want to go to lunch with you, and I don't want to have coffee with you. And so I think there's a lot of people that did find that they could be at more peace from being at home. And that same thing that makes leadership comfortable, or is what's making other people uncomfortable, where I don't want it. I cannot live in denial if I have to go and see all of the leadership in the hierarchy. Like, we can pretend that things don't exist, because I don't have conflict with myself at home, where I have to say something or do something. But I do like the point of bringing it, like, these are your kids. Like, that's what you made. So, and people say they don't relate. Well, that explains a lot.
That's the part, I think, for me that is also resonating. Is like, yeah, these are your kids. And it's also how many leaders will say to, oh, well, we need to bring them back in the office because we can't trust them, or we don't know what they're doing, or we don't. And I'm like, I don't care how much time any of my team members take off. Just do your work. Do your work, meet your goals, have a great time otherwise. Like,
what do we want? You know, I want the work to be done.
Yes.
Or, so if Susan has, a powerful 4 hours from 8 to 12, and then from 6 to 10, she's, doing whatever because she has childcare and all of that in that block. I don't care if the work is being done. But if you're so wedded to a system that we already understand, research shows us that's not how people work. That's not how a majority of folks work. Do you want the work done, or do you want the work done in the way? Is it necessary for you to buy keystroke software so that you can understand what people are, who's reviewing that? How much time are you spending? No one's
reviewing that. But the other part of it is, this is the thing that I think is important to understand about how leadership went through. It's like, what I want is, I want to be like my dad, grandpa, cousin, and I want to go in and physically tell somebody what to do and watch them do that, so I can have an illustration of power outside of the company being successful. Because part of that success means I don't have to work, and I force other people to work. And I don't
and Jackie, I'm so glad, I apologize for interjecting, but I'm so glad that you shared that, because it's what I call the Don Draper effect, right? In Mad Men, Don Draper waltzes into the office. He says, give me ideas. He puts his feet up on the desk, has a brandy, sexually harasses the women in the office, and is brilliant. right? And what you highlighted this, I want to do what people did before me without examining whether or not it actually worked and what could we have achieved but for these limitations, right? So I have to do this because that's how people did it before me. You know, we have to go. I worked in an organization where every Thursday the men in the office would go golfing. And I said to someone before, I said, how do you know that I don't have golf clubs in my car right now? I've not been invited. I don't see any women going with you. And to your point, Jackie, you say, I want to work. I don't want to be liked. Likability has been that thing that's advanced many people's careers, right? Because it's, I don't want to objectively see, are you a high performer or not? And if you're not a high performer, well, you know, they've got great potential and their potential is solely predicated on my ability to tolerate them and I like them. And the guy said, oh, well, you know, I don't know. I mean, it's just a way for guys to decompress. And like, it's like, we want to get away from our wives. And I was like, I'm not married to anybody here.
Right.
Right. So again, the questioning, and then shortly after that, at least officially, you know, the discussion of the Thursday golf outings, they didn't happen. But these are people who left the office a little bit early, right? So objectively, they're not doing as much work as other people because this is what makes them comfortable. So to your point, like the Don Draper effect, we have to move past the benchmark for success can't be comfort.
Right.
That is absolutely right. And it's also why DEIB is so important. And
Right.
the next reckoning that we have, it has to go further than that, because what we're seeing is a pattern that started with slavery to now. It's the same
Correct.
thing.
Correct.
That's why we have to talk. And a lot of organizations, when we had our, you know, our this 1 year where people were paying more attention, 2 years, maybe 3 years, or paying attention, weren't able to go as deep as necessary in order to break the patterns where we were trying to look at systemic patterns, because we call it systemic patterns instead of white supremacy and racism that happened when you started stealing people and forcing them to do things beneath them because you didn't want to do it. It's just another version of that. And and to be clear, that goes across races and genders, because that's the example of leadership that we're trying to switch. And it changes when you have people that honestly just want to go to work, do their job, and go home. People have no idea what to do. The first time someone asked me that in HR, like, we were like, oh, what are you inspired by? And they were like, I'm inspired by my paycheck, and I just want to get my paycheck and go home. And I was like, I don't even know what, that is not in the SHRM book, and I don't know what to do with that. There is no chapter on people who just do their job. There is not a chapter.
So that for them, it might be freedom, right? Like, I value freedom, which means, again, I'm not motivated by achievement. I want to get in, get my paycheck, get out. And leadership has always, it's been about coercive power, right? I can brute force, get your butt in the seat. I'm going to withhold resources from you and extort you. And we have people who are not responding to that. And there is a leadership crisis because we don't know what to do. Well, if the Don Draper, you know, model doesn't work, well, then what do we do?
Well, and I think taking your example one step further, we know what happened with Don Draper. You know, he
correct.
You get outdated, you lose that direction, you lose power. And I think that's part of it too, is you are talking about power. And that's where I always go, is that it's this, I have to assert my power over someone to show that I'm the boss, versus, like, someone just said to me last week, well, Katie, you're the head of HR. So, like, you know, people are going to do, and I was like, oh yeah, I don't really think of that. Like, I'm more like, hey, we're all just working together and trying to like do cool stuff. But it's true, because I'm like, I don't look at it from that perspective, from that viewpoint. I'm like, no, we all contribute in our own way. And so how do we also value that differently? And like the whole, like, someone asked last week, what are the core hours for the company? And I was like, we're a global company. That's not a thing. We
Yeah.
can't have that be a thing. Like I could say, oh, well, you have to work every day from 4 a.m. until noon to make sure that you can cover Europe. And they would all laugh me out of the room. But
Right.
yeah, I don't know. But I would love to know if you could share, what are one or two things that you would like our audience to have heard during this episode, or things that they can take away and kind of that call to action, whatever you'd like to share.
Yeah. So I would say again, clarity and conflict are probably what's holding you back. You probably lack clarity. It's not a judgment. It's okay. And conflict, your ability to withstand conflict, to see it as an opportunity instead of an obstruction and something to be avoided at all costs, is probably what's impeding you. And then, again, examine your relationship with power, right? Do you rely on coercive power, right? Brute force, I tell you what to do. Your legitimate power, your title, and what's motivating you at work, and how can you leverage that to become a better leader?
Awesome. Jackie, what you got?
This is real deep, Katie.
I
It's
know.
just real deep. I don't know. I mean, right now I am focused on I'm as a person within Gen X and figuring out, because that's kind of like the stage we're at right now, right? Within a majority of leaders. And it is very interesting on the impact. And really, I mean, because we laugh about it all of the time, because, we were the ones that they had commercials and told their parents to hug them, and also asked them, do you know where your kids are? Because they literally didn't hug us, and they didn't know where we were, and they couldn't call us because we didn't have cell phones, and we didn't tell them where we were. We said, good luck, and I'll see you when I get home. And so as a result, we are helicopter parents that didn't know how to parent. So how does that affect how we micromanage leaders, don't trust the ability to do those things? How are those things showing up at work? And also, I really appreciated conflict curious and being conflict curious, which just cracks me up, because it's like, oh, that's because it makes me think, and that is my mother, like, coming back to laugh at me. I think that phrase, because she always would say, unless you're going to come directly to me, I'm going to assume everything is okay. And she used to tell me, I know you're not talking to me like that, because I did nothing to you. And I'd be like, oh. So then I'd have to say, this is what's happening. But it's still smart to be like, whoa, all I did was click yes on the Zoom, and all of a sudden now we're here. We're all supposed to be leading toward the same goal, but something's going on that's going to get in the way. So I think getting more curious, instead of just sitting there typing about like, oh, such and such seems really angry, is starting a conversation of getting curious, instead of just accepting that somebody's in a bad mood, of getting curious. And I think a lot of people do that, especially with the Zoom meetings. So I don't know. That was like 35 things. I hope somebody picked up on a little bit of it.
I was just going to point out, my first point, Brittany, is that yes, we are the youngest, but we're also Gen X. So basically our parents didn't even know we existed.
We weren't loved. It's a miracle.
So
a miracle that we made it.
Like the fact that we're still alive and walking this earth is just, that alone is a win. Because I'm pretty sure my parents were just so tired by the time I was of age that they were like, just don't die. Like, that's all I ask. Is curfew, sure, but just make sure you get home at some point, They
had you to distract your siblings.
Yeah.
We need something to distract them.
Yes, exactly.
Have a baby.
Exactly. Yeah. Have a baby, someone get married, whatever. Yeah. Just leave me out of it. But all jokes aside, I think it's also exactly what you both are saying, is this not just like conflict curious, but also the being okay with conflict. If someone is raising their voice, or if someone is questioning or pushing or whatever it might be, it's being curious about that, but also being okay with it. Because I think so many of us, when someone does raise their voice or does go, well, that's not right, Brittany, you're wrong, and here's why, we immediately shut down or go on the defense versus, okay, tell me more about that or say more words. And then the last one is also the, please don't make people come to the office. That is all. That is all.
That
Yeah.
part.
Yeah.
And
Trust
And also, like, you're just,
is
I think
earned.
you're brilliant, Brittany. I think you're brilliant. I really want, the biggest thing is just to like listen to your voice. I think you have such a unique point of view that is really clear to understand. And so many people don't get it. That's why I was like, we could have shut down, turned this off at minute 7. I was done. I had work to do. I got a new assignment. I need to get off of here and talk to my team right now.
I
911.
I was actually thinking normally, you have that meeting with your therapist and then come back in 2 weeks and tell them all the things that you've done from what you talked
Right.
about.
Yeah.
So Brittany, we'll be coming back in 2 weeks to let you
Yes.
know our
I will be checking in,
We can't
Excited
afford
to
your
hear.
hourly rate, but if you could,
Yeah, right.
you can send it to our
You
assistant.
know.
We'll put a payment plan.
Yeah. Do we get a friends and family discount at this
I was
point?
just gonna say, there's the inclusive AF discount,
Okay,
that we're
perfect,
working
perfect.
with. So
Awesome. So Brittany, how can folks find you? How can they work with you? Where do they need to look to find you?
absolutely. So if you go to BND, as in Be Nobody's Darling, consulting.group, you will find me, and there's a section that says Let's Talk, and we can figure that out. You can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Threads, and Twitter, X, but we'll call it Twitter, all at BND Consulting. So I'm really excited to connect with whoever's listening.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, Brittany, thank you. This was an awesome conversation. Really appreciate it. We have our therapy notes now. We have our draft. And yes, we'll let you know how it goes. But thank you so much for joining us. This is Katie Van Horn.
And this is Jackie Clayton. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.